I took a long break from filming videos this summer, but I'm back. And before we dive into the books that I want to share with you today, I first want to tell you that the one place you can be sure to find me is in my monthly newsletter, where I share books recently published by indie and nonprofit presses. I'll leave a link to sign up for that newsletter below. That newsletter will happen except in the event of extreme disaster. That newsletter will happen even if I'm not able to post regularly here on YouTube. So be sure to sign up for that newsletter below. And since we're speaking of my newsletter, I have 13 books that I want to tell you about today that were all mentioned in previous newsletters from this summer. These are all books published by indie and nonprofit presses this summer. They're all fiction books because that's kind of my jam. I think they're all fiction books. We'll see as we go along. That's kind of my jam. Even if you do get my newsletter, you might have missed them. So I want to share with you these 13 books because they are books that I think sound fantastic. But before I dive into these books, I want to know what you read and loved this summer. Since I haven't been super active here on YouTube for a couple of months, I want to know in the comments below, what did you read and love this summer? Would you recommend it? Let us all know. We would love to hear. So first up, from Archipelago Books, we have The Living and the Rest by Jose Eduardo Agualusa, translated by Daniel Hahn. And this novel follows a group of writers who are stranded on a storm-ravaged Mozambique during a literary festival. They are from all across Africa and find themselves amidst this storm, questioning reality, time, and the role of imagination. When a sudden cyclone strikes, the writers are cut off from the mainland. They wonder together whether the world they know has ended and what, real or imagined, might come next. I particularly appreciated Alan Kaufman's blurb, which helped me get a handle on kind of the style of this book. It says, "Cross J.M. Coetzee with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and you've got Jose Eduardo Agualusa, Portugal's next candidate for the Nobel Prize." Next up is Boulogne Press, which is from Ireland, and they published The Rarest Fruit by Gaël Belem, translated by Karen Fleetwood and Laetitia Saint-Lubert. This book is based on a real historical figure, Edmond Albius, who was born into slavery on Bourbon Island, which is now Réunion, and transformed the world when at age 12 he unlocked the secret to pollinating the vanilla orchid. The Rarest Fruit is a sensuous, sharply told story of a person who changed the world but who was never allowed to claim their triumph. This is a newly translated novel from the winner of the 2024 UK Republic of Consciousness Prize, which has been renamed. Wait a minute. What is the new name? Which has been renamed the Queen Mary Small Press Fiction Prize. So more on that another time. But just so you know, the UK Republic of Consciousness Prize has a new name. So this Gaël Belem wrote the book that won last year's UK Republic of Consciousness Prize, back when it was still the Republic of Consciousness Prize there. Next up, from Coach House Books, which is a publisher in Canada, is Horsefly by Muriel Gagné, translated by Pablo Strauss. This is another novel rooted in historical fact. It's a gripping eco-horror novel about a sinister bioweapons project during World War II involving anthrax and insects. And this project resurfaces decades later during a scorching Quebec heat wave. And it's described as startlingly relevant and is a sharp warning about the costs of tampering with the natural world. And this novel gives 3 narrative threads that you follow as a reader. So first is an entomologist in 1942 who presumably is working on this insect-related bioweapons project. And then you follow a young man in 21st century Quebec who presumably is impacted by this bioweapons project coming terrifyingly back to life. And the third narrative thread that you follow is, wait for it, a sentient horsefly. That's cool. From Coffee House Press, which is in the United States, is Auditioned by the New Zealand author Pip Adam. This poignant novel is set in space and it explores power and the justice system. 3 giants are, so like when I started talking about that bug, the cicadas, like the horsefly in the previous book, the cicadas got really loud. Did you hear that? That's creepy. Okay. Audition is where am I? Okay, it's set in space. And you follow 3 giants who are crammed into a spaceship. And the spaceship's name is Audition. And the only way to keep the spaceship moving is the 3 giants have to keep talking. And if they stop, they start growing. Their bodies start growing. And so as they're kind of forced to speak, they discover kind of shared memories of why they've become imprisoned in this way. I loved Pip Adams' lovely and utterly weird novel called The New Animals, which was published by Dorothy a few years ago. That was one of the weirdest books that I read for sure that year, maybe ever. And I adored the ending. So it was like I love-hated the ending, one of those situations. Worth it in the end. So I can't wait to read Audition. From Grove Atlantic, we have 2 republished novels from Amos Tutuola. His debut novel was originally published in 1952. It's called The Palm Wine Drinkard. And this follows a man, palm wine obsessed drunkard, whose one source of alcohol dies. And so he journeys into a surreal underworld to retrieve his source of alcohol in a very wildly imaginative tale that's drawn from Yoruba folklore. And this is both Tutuola's debut novel, but also considered his finest masterpiece, which is kind of remarkable to have your debut be your masterpiece. Where do you go from there? This new edition also includes an introduction from Wole Soyinka. And the second novel to come out from Grove Atlantic from Amos Tutuola was published in 1954 and is called My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. And this is, again, his second novel, and it follows a young boy who's lost in a haunted forest that's teeming with spirits and strange beings. He searches for a way out until a ghostess with televisions for hands offers an unlikely chance at escape. And this novel has an introduction from Kaveh Akbar. From Hagfish is another republished novel called Two Smithereens by Rosalind Drexler. This follows a young woman named Rosa in 1970s Manhattan who's caught in a dubious romance with a mediocre art critic named Paul. Paul loves to be dominated by physically powerful women, and so Rosa, to satisfy him, agrees to fulfill one of his sexual fantasies, which is becoming a wrestler. When she does, she actually finds out that she really loves the sport and joins a team and tours with them across the southern part of the United States. And along the way, develops the strength not just to win matches, but also finally assert who she is and what she wants. So this offbeat feminist classic was originally published in 1972, and Rosalind Drexler is a pop artist, novelist, and former pro wrestler herself. Next up, from Ike, a publishing project, is a sharply drawn novella based on the true story of Charles Lane, an 18th century transcendentalist who failed at an attempt to found a commune, which he tried to create this commune along with Amos Bronson Alcott, who was the father of Louisa May Alcott. So after this failure of this commune, Charles Lane is left disillusioned and searching for purpose, so he moves to a Shaker village with his son, and while there, he accidentally signs his son away into a life of indentured servitude and has to turn to the Alcott family for help. What caught my eye about this, other than that's like a crazy story that I didn't know about, is that this publisher is completely dedicated to shorter work that a lot of publishers often will ignore, like novellas and long essays. Transit Books also has a really cool series that's similarly dedicated to like shorter works that are often ignored. I'm blanking on the name of their series, but I just love that concept. From New Directions is We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Cabezon Camara, translated by Robin Myers. This is based on the life of a real historical figure from the Spanish conquest. A running theme for this video is books based on real historical figures. This rich, surreal novel follows Antonio de Arauso, who escaped a Basque convent as a young girl, and now as Antonio finds himself in a picaresque adventure in the wilds of the New World. From the publisher, they say it is a masterful subversion of Latin American history with a trans character at its center, finding in the rainforest a magical, surreal space where transformation is not only possible, but necessary. I got so excited when I saw this book because I read and loved The Adventures of China Iron, which was published several years ago by Charco Press. It was one of the first books that I featured on this channel, so it will always have a really special place in my heart. So I can't wait to read this one. Next up from Snuggly Books, which is based in the UK, is The Sons of Ishmael by George Burgundio. This caught my eye, especially because I'm reading Moby Dick very slowly and intentionally, roughly a page and a half each night. And you can't see the name Ishmael without thinking, both of Moby Dick and the Old Testament. So that's what caught my eye first and foremost. But this is actually a cult classic of contemporary fantastic fiction. It's a collection that gathers haunting, elusive tales of outcasts navigating strange lands and stranger fates, much like Ishmael himself. Across continents, from the Norwegian Lapland to the New World, and across centuries, from 19th century Chile to World War II Germany, these atmospheric stories offer a deeply nostalgic tribute to the displaced and the dispossessed. This was originally published in 2010, only 150 copies from its original publisher, but it still managed to achieve cult status according to the publisher, which is super intriguing. Next up by Soft Skull Press is Curandera by Iranozan Okoji. This is a richly imaginative novel set between 17th century Cape Verde and contemporary London. The arrival of the shamanic disciple Zumira triggers a series of strange events in Cape Verde in the 17th century. Meanwhile, a group of kindred spirits in London who share a divine ancestry grapple with the mysterious consequences of a sacred supernatural task that sends them into another realm entirely. This book blends spirituality with fantasy and explores friendship, love, and cosmic transformation across time and place. And what really caught my eye as I was digging into this book was a great review on Goodreads from the unparalleled indie press reader Paul Fulcher. So that great review caught my eye first and foremost, plus it just sounds super intriguing. Speaking of transit books is The Island by Antigone Kefala. This is a novel of displacement, exile, and longing. We follow a character named Melina as she seeks to discover more about the place she and her family come from, far from the island where she currently lives. This was originally published in 1984, and the late poet and writer Kefala was originally from Romania and developed a cult following in her adopted home of Australia. She's finally reaching the United States with the publication of this novel, and given the author's background, I think the novel itself is kind of meant to evoke taking place in Australia and is about the main character trying to learn about her family's home that may or may not be similar to Romania. I don't know that for sure, but that's kind of the vibe that I get. And last but not least, from $2 Radio, which is a publisher located in Columbus, Ohio, and is now an imprint of Seven Stories Press. They joined forces with Seven Stories Press, which is another great publisher, is Absence by Issa Quincy. And as a child, an unnamed narrator's mother reads to him a poem. And throughout the life, this poem reappears mysteriously through the stories of other people in the narrator's life. And what results is a novel that is made up of nested stories of all these people. The stories traverse place and time, from the British countryside to Thailand to Cyprus to Tunisia. I've seen it compared to like a nested Russian doll, like this one, which is from the 1970s. My dad got when he went on a trip to the Soviet Union. Or also it's been compared to like a tapestry, like a woven tapestry of characters. And more than one review compares this to both the work of Proust and Sebald. So that's going on the to be read list for sure. So that great list did not include all of the amazing books I found that were published in August, just last month. the last month of summer and last month from now. So if you want the list of books I found that were published by indie and nonprofit presses in August, you have to sign up for my newsletter. So go ahead and do that in the link below. The August edition will come out in a few weeks, usually mid-September. I always list books published the previous month because it's just easier for me to compile, and that way the books are ready for you to purchase if you so desire. But I've also dog-eared something for you from this past month that I wanted to remember to share with you. That's gonna be something I start doing at the end of some of my videos. Dog ear or bookmark something that has happened to me recently that I want to share with you that may or may not be book related, but I think is fun. And so I've dog-eared it for myself to remember to tell you about. This month's dog ear is about a dinner that my husband and I attended, a gorgeous, gorgeous outdoor dinner in South Haven, Michigan at a farm called Seedling Farm. This was a Christmas present from my parents. They call themselves a traveling restaurant, an organization called Outstanding in the Field, and they travel all around the country and a little bit throughout the world as well, and they put on these dinner events outdoors in farms, like local farms all around the country. And it's a multi-course meal. There's appetizers and drinks beforehand, and then you sit down for this multi-course meal. You're supposed to bring your own plate, so everybody comes with their own beautiful plate, and you sit down to this beautiful meal in a gorgeous setting, and you get a tour of the farm from the farmer. So they also hire like a local chef, so ideally you're eating food that is come from nearby or from the farm that you're sitting at. My parents have gone to one at an avocado farm and in an olive grove. Again, what I mentioned, one of the highlights is that you get a farm tour from the farmer. And I'm sharing this with you today because it doesn't matter where I go. I can be in the middle, standing in the middle of a peach orchard, in the middle of a farm, and I cannot escape indie presses because we're taking this farm tour from Farmer Pete of Seedling Farm, and what does he bring up? None other than Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which is published by Milkweed Editions. And he's standing there giving us this tour, and he says to the group of I think it's 120, 160 people, he says, "Has anybody read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer?" And my husband, who knows me so well and knows what I read, looks at me and he's like, nobody else nodded, but I was nodding along. And of course it's, those of you who have read it, many of us have read this by now, know that it is an absolutely beautiful book. Farmer Pete, I'm pretty sure his name was Pete. Farmer Pete brings up Braiding Sweetgrass in his farm tour because in reference specifically to the history of the farm and the evidence that he's found in the types of trees that grow on the farm that was evidence in his eyes that people have been living and cultivating that land for many, 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 many centuries. And I believe that in South Haven, Michigan, the South Haven, Michigan area is the traditional homeland of members of the Potawatomi, Peoria, and Odawa tribes. So it was just really nice to be reminded of that while we spent the evening on that land. And also great to hear a shout out of this incredible book, Braiding Sweetgrass. So that's my dog ear experience that I want to share with you today. If you have the opportunity to check out Outstanding in the Field, it's a very, very, very special experience. Again, this was a Christmas gift, a very special Christmas gift from my parents, but it is a super cool program. Check it out. If you are in the Midwest, you probably have seen Seedling Farm. I already knew them because they are at all our farmers markets in Chicago. There's usually a stand from Seedling Farm, and I think they do smoothies and sell fruit, and they sell all sorts of fruit. We ate in the rows of the peach trees, and it was just the most beautiful, beautiful night. So that is one of the things I've been up to this past month, but I have also been reading a whole heck of a lot in the month of August. If you want to know what I've been reading, my series, including every single nominee from this year's 2025 Republic of Consciousness Prize, United States and Canada, is going to be linked above and below. I will have a video on every single nominee for this year's prize for you to enjoy and learn about. So I hope you will check that out next. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Sarah. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.